Welcome to this special episode of Untold History. Today, we will explore an event that marked modern history in a way that few could have anticipated: the attacks of September 11th, 2001. This tragic day marked a before and after in global history, leaving a deep mark on society, politics, and international security. It was a sunny morning, like any other day at that time. On September 11th, most Americans began their day, not knowing that they would change their lives forever. On that day, a group of 19 terrorists affiliated with Al-Qaeda would carry out an attack that had been years in the making. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. At first, tower workers and passers-by thought it was an accident. However, everything changed when at 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower. Within minutes, the entire world watched in horror as two of the world's tallest and most recognizable buildings turned into scenes of devastation. Inside the towers, the chaos was indescribable. Evacuation orders varied by floor, and while some workers managed to descend quickly, others were trapped. An elevator in the North Tower remained operational briefly, saving several survivors. However, the flames and smoke soon made any rescue from the upper floors impossible. Emergency crews, not knowing if the buildings would collapse, heroically climbed the stairs to try to save lives. One of the lesser-known aspects of that day was the speed and scale of the evacuation in Manhattan. More than 500,000 people were evacuated by sea thanks to a spontaneous operation led by captains of private and commercial ships. It was the largest sea rescue in history, surpassing even the evacuation of Dunkirk in World War II. As the world watched in amazement, just over half an hour later in another part of the country, at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, causing a huge crater and damaging one of the building's wings. Despite the impact, many employees returned to construction amid the flames to help evacuate others. This act of bravery prevented an even greater number of fatalities. There was one more flight hijacked by the terrorists. United Airlines Flight 93, possibly targeting the Capitol or the White House, never hit its target. The passengers, upon learning of the attacks on New York and the Pentagon, decided to confront the hijackers. They used kitchen utensils and fire extinguishers to try to regain control of the aircraft. Although the plane crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, its sacrifice prevented a greater tragedy in the nation's capital. The scale of the tragedy was overwhelming. The attacks claimed the lives of 2,977 people, including citizens of more than 90 countries, and left more than 6,000 injured. Among the victims were passengers on the planes, workers of the Twin Towers, Pentagon personnel, and the brave first responders who responded to the scene. In addition, thousands of people who were exposed to toxic dust at Ground Zero have developed serious illnesses in the years since, some of them fatal. This devastating human toll made September 11th one of the most tragic days in modern history. The attacks not only destroyed buildings and human lives, they also profoundly altered the way people perceived themselves and the world. In the days that followed, New York City became a symbol of resilience and unity. Hundreds of first responders, volunteers, and ordinary citizens worked day and night at Ground Zero, searching for survivors and clearing the rubble. Among them were firefighters and police officers who sacrificed their lives while trying to save others. In addition to the Twin Towers, other buildings in the World Trade Center complex collapsed or were irreparably damaged, such as Building 7, whose collapse is still the subject of debate and theories. In total, more than 1.8 million tons of debris had to be removed in a months-long cleanup operation. The attacks also brought with them lesser-known stories of solidarity. For example, a small Canadian town, Gander, on the island of Newfoundland, received more than 6,000 passengers from diverted planes following the closure of U.S. airspace. The residents of this city opened their homes and hearts to complete strangers, proving that humanity can shine even in the darkest of times. From a technical point of view, the attacks also revealed the fragility of communication and coordination systems in crisis situations. For the first time in history, U.S. airspace was completely closed, leaving the skies in eerie silence, save for military flights. Controllers faced an unprecedented challenge in coordinating the landing of more than 4,000 commercial aircraft, a feat accomplished in just a few hours. The psychological impact of the attacks was global. Around the world, images of towers collapsing and rescue teams removing debris generated a wave of solidarity. On the other hand, the attacks also stoked political and religious tensions, exacerbating divisions that persist to this day. The response of the United States government was immediate. President George Bush declared a war on terror and launched a military offensive in Afghanistan in October 2001. The Taliban regime, which gave refuge to al-Qaeda and its leader Osama bin Laden, was the main target. However, the war dragged on for nearly 2 decades, leaving its own legacy of destruction and controversy. The attacks also transformed the daily lives of millions. Security measures at airports, public buildings, and mass events were drastically tightened. The Patriot Act, passed weeks after September 11th, expanded the powers of law enforcement agencies, sparking debates about privacy and civil rights. In the midst of the tragedy, stories of heroism and humanity also emerged. Rescuers risked their lives to save others, and thousands of volunteers volunteered to help with the rescue and cleanup efforts. Among them, search dogs played a vital role, locating survivors and providing emotional comfort to work teams. A lesser-known aspect is how architects and engineers have studied attacks to improve security in modern skyscrapers. From faster evacuation systems to more fire-resistant structures, the legacy of the Twin Towers is reflected in the construction of buildings around the world. Today, more than 2 decades later, the memory of 9/11 lives on, not only as a day of tragedy, but also as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. On the site where the towers stood, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York honors the victims and documents the lasting impact of the attacks. Each year, the tribute in light projects 2 columns of light into the sky, symbolizing the lost towers and the indomitable spirit of those who perished. In this special episode, we have tried to honor the memory of those who lost their lives, as well as recognize those who showed the best of humanity in one of its darkest days. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Untold History. If you liked this tribute to one of the most significant events of our era, don't forget to subscribe and share it. See you in the next episode.